Tell us the history of how that cool name Red 7 came about.
Well, it all came about because back in the day, probably the turn of the century, which is kind of funny to say now when you think turn of the century, you're thinking, well, back in 1900. No. Actually, it was maybe even late 90s. I was doing a radio show up in Parkersburg, West Virginia. It was a show called Genre, where people would send in their tapes, and at the time, tapes, we would put them on the air, and then we would interview them right there in the studio. So it was, I thought it would be fun to have my own little stage name at that point. Just if I'm going to immerse myself into it, let's just go all the way. So Red Savage came about. Now, when I came down here to Carolina, some people brought it to my attention that it could possibly be offensive to Native Americans, which I didn't really want that to be the case. So I did a compromise, and 7 was kind of a cool number, cool name, and it works out real well. It flows. So I'm Red 7 now. So
yeah, nice, very, very memorable. And tell us about the little love child combination of Gene Simmons, Hulk Hogan, and Doug the Bounty Hunter. That's an interesting combo there.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. A friend of mine told me that I had that I kind of reminded him of that. Largely with the hair, give me that kind of Dog the Bounty Hunter kind of look. And I'm a rocker. I play bass, kind of like Gene Simmons does. And when you get Hulk Hogan, I'm kind of an over-the-top person. I'm a musclehead. I go to the gym. I'm a gym rat. Not afraid to trash talk like Hulk Hogan, and I flex gratuitously, of course, because part of being me.
You've had a really interesting career in music. Can you take us through that journey? So it's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, the music part was one of those things. I always loved it. And when I was younger, as an Asperger person, and at the time, back in the 70s, we didn't know what that was. It was just me not being able to pay attention, or me, being gauche or whatnot. But I really loved music, and my older brother played it. And I admired my older brother. He got really, really good, and he's still really, really good now. He's a blues player. So basically, in my later 20s, I was coaching and teaching tennis, which now those two things you wouldn't think would be, similar in any way, except that you could actually use your tennis racket and play it like a guitar if you wanted to, pantomime, that sort of thing. And I would have a couple kinds of students. I'd have some that, first day we're hitting back and forth and they're good, And then I had some people, I was pitching a ball to them for an hour, and they would swing and miss for an hour. They might go through their hour and not hit a single ball. So what I did was I picked up the guitar as a means of getting some empathy, really, because I could tell they were frustrated. I was frustrated. But the cool thing about them is they would always come back. And eventually they built on that. They'd hit a ball, they'd hit 2 balls, and before you know it, we were back and forth, hitting back and forth. It took a little longer than, say, other players, but the same thing with the guitar. It was, I think, like anything, you just got to fight through the suck stage. And it's misery, it's tedious, and I didn't have any natural talent at all. So, and I bounced between the guitar and the bass, and so, fast forward that to me living in Greensboro, probably about 7-8 years ago. I was at a friend's house, and I picked up his guitar, and, I was kind of doodling around with it, and he said, dude, why don't you start playing it? Go to open mic nights. And so I'm like, oh, I guess. So, the challenge was on.
But you got a couple of albums, right? And a couple of things on Spotify and stuff?
Yeah, I got a bunch of songs on Spotify since then. And what started with open mic night, I remember doing Folsom Prison Blues. And because it was a 3-chord song, it was pretty easy. But that first time performing in front of people, it was like I was playing guitar with boxing gloves on. It was just like, whoa, it was like so nervous. But I powered through it and just kept going on. And I found another open mic place that so I could do it twice a week, and I really got comfortable with it. And in the course of doing that, I would go out and see bands, and I would meet people. And I met a guy, and one of my aspirations was to do voiceover work. So I went to his place and just to lay down like an audition track for selling myself as a vocalist. I didn't know anything.
Would you say you're a singer, you're a guitarist, you're a rocker? How would you categorize yourself?
Singer, songwriter, guitar player, bass player. I'm also what they call VO, voiceover for people not familiar with the terms. Because
nice. I noticed you mentioned Asperger's, and you had mentioned in your bio the gift of Asperger's syndromes. Can you tell me how that has affected your life, and when you realized that there was actually something that had to be acknowledged by the world and maybe by the medical community?
Well, yeah, it was just back in those days, and I was born back in '65, and so people didn't really understand what that was. So, they see a kid who doesn't pay attention very well in school. I was undisciplined. I was being a waste of talent. You've got so much potential, and it would frustrate me too, because for whatever reason I knew what I had to do, but staying focused and staying on point sometimes, because I would get obsessed about other things. And what it did was socially it kind of worked against me, because I just didn't understand things. A lot of things that people do naturally, especially when you're in your teens, you're meeting guys and gals or whatnot, and people just seem to know what to do, and I had no clue at all. I was like, is there like a manual? And so I'd ask questions, and I would take my cues from television, which wasn't always a good thing.
Sure. So how does it allow you to keenly focus on any given character and bring them to life?
Well, what it does now, what it really does for me now is over time I've stripped away inhibitions, and over time I've gotten to where I could connect right away to people. So even performing live is not a problem. I do it every day where I work. And I've gone to challenge myself, and a lot of it just overcoming those things, the fears, the inhibitions, what was earlier an inability to connect with people, has forced me to really work hard on those areas. And frankly,
so how has it helped you remove those inhibitions that make it easier to perform in front of others?
Practice. Part of what since I didn't get it, I didn't really understand how relationships were formed or how to form any of my own. I would take my cues from television, and what I would do was I would come up with sort of a model and think to myself, well, that guy's cool because he does this, this, and this. And if I do this, this, and this, then I'll be cool too, and I will be successful with relationships. Needless to say, that's not really the case, but it's something I did. And so as a performer, I would get used to just like walking up to people and just saying things randomly. I had a joke in my head, and with the job I have at Sam's Club, I bring somebody's groceries out and I see something about them or their groceries, and I make a comment. I just go right off the top of my head, and I smile.
Many famous actors and comedians and artists have Asperger's, and it's amazing. If you Google that, you find out dozens and dozens of very well-respected, successful actors, comedians, and artists have Asperger's. So tell me a little bit. I noticed that in your bio that you have a pacemaker and you suffered 3 strokes in 2017. How you doing with that now? Are you okay?
Everything's going really well now. I got my pacer probably about 15 years ago. It was just one of those. It was a weird thing. A lot of people have them now. They have built-in defibrillators. Mine was a case of my heart rate just started slowing down. It was in the 40s. My pulse was like 40 something, and it happened over Christmas. And it was one of those things where I was married with kids. I wanted to spend time at Christmas at home, and my wife wanted me to go and do the big family thing with her family and stuff. And I was really tired and just really exhausted. And she thought I was having a bad attitude at the time. But ultimately, her mom saw that I was really kind of sick and told me I needed to go to the ER. So I called off of work and went in, and they said, dude, you need a pacer. And
tell me about your experience as being a veteran. Looks like you have a lot of skills in terms of machine guns and stuff. Take us through the journey as a veteran.
It was one of those things where I'm from a small town in southeast Ohio, Marietta, established in 1788. The first organized settlement in the Northwest Territory. But it was a small town, I wanted to get out and see the world. So, instead of going to college like mom and dad wanted me to do, I told them, I said, I just got to get out of here and see the world and see things. So I joined the Army. I worked Intel. And through the course of my adventures, I got to put my hands on some really interesting equipment. Got to fire a 50 cal, an M60. The weapon that I used was basically it was the M16A1, which was a Vietnam War era version of the M16. But I had the M2.
Was that a grenade? A grenade of sorts?
Well, what happened with it was the 203 M203 grenade launcher. It was an appliance that fit on my rifle, so that it had the capability of firing 5.56 millimeter rounds, or I could use the 40 millimeter grenade launcher.
Wow, and you also drove an armored vehicle too, carrier?
Yeah, I learned how to drive the M113, which was really interesting. It was a tracked vehicle. I mean, when I was a kid, playing Army was just one of those things we did. And, to be able to drive that sort of thing was really kind of cool. It was kind of intimidating a little bit, but once I got used to it, it was pretty interesting.
Wow. Now, here's like the $1 million question that I think a lot of people have misinformation on, or they're misinformed, or they think they understand it and they don't. So why don't you clarify exactly your journey as a transition man to a woman? Take us through it and assume most of us are pretty clueless as to what that involves, and maybe just tell us how it's affected your life and people around you and your career and everything else.
Well, to start with that sort of thing, it had a lot to do with growing up. I just kind of felt a little different. When people ask me, why did you transition? And, I'll just kind of look at them, with my typical smart ass grin and say, it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. I want to try something new, try some new adventures. But, growing up, and when you're growing up at the age where I think we're similar in age enough where, that was not really accepted at all. And so I was always overconfident, or not overconfident. I was always self-conscious, and I overcompensated. I was worried about being labeled a sissy and getting beat up and all that stuff. Like a lot of fears, it probably wasn't true, but I had those fears, and it was something that I had to kind of suppress throughout my whole life, really, until later, probably the last 5 or 6 years. I just, when you hit a lot of tragical things in your life, it kind of, sometimes that'll break down barriers that you've built up through time, and after I lost my my ex-wife and my son in a car crash, it was an action signal. I mean, life is too short.
I'm so sorry about that. Well, we'll get to that in a moment, but had you transitioned before they passed?
I had started taking hormones, but I didn't really express it around them very much, but because I had come out to my ex at one point, and it was a real devastating experience.
Yeah, that was my question. How does people around you who loved you react to this?
Well, she didn't like it at all, but I think it had to do with kind of like some buyer's remorse. I mean, it's one of those things where, you're with somebody for a long time, and then you find out something that would have been a deal breaker if you'd known right up front. So,
what about your son?
My kids have all been very approval of it. They've always been loving and caring, and we're very supportive through the whole process.
Well, here's some basic questions I think the public would know. When you sign something, it says Mr., Mrs., boy, girl. I mean, what do you legally put down on applications, or how do you identify? I am whatever. How do you deal with that in your life?
Well, I use the pronoun she, her. Though, writing it on a form, it's kind of a weird thing because I wasn't one of those girly types. I mean, after I made the transition bodily, physically, and I'm happy where I am right now. I don't have any strong desire to try to fool anybody into thinking that I'm some hot chick somewhere, because this is not me. I mean, it's fine for other people that they like to do that. I I just dress and do what I want. I mostly wear gym
Yeah, because
clothes anyway.
if I can be direct, I mean, you look pretty masculine. I mean, you look like a guy's guy too. You know what I mean? It's not like I look at
Yeah.
you and oh, there's Mary Poppins. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I really present strongly as a male. And so I actually wrote a song called Frankenbarbie, where it was kind of a satirical punk rock song based on that. About, while I think of myself as feminine, I really
So if you
don't
were
look at,
casting, so if you were casting yourself, notwithstanding the type of roles, because we all know the kind of roles you go out on, but would you be going out on roles for she, for he? I mean, you see what I'm saying? In other words, would you tell
yeah.
your agent?
Yeah, I would probably go with the he roles because I present mostly as male. And I could pass off as male. Yeah, I got a slight chest, which, you combine that with working out, it makes
Right.
people think I have like pecs. In
Right.
fact,
Nice.
when I was at work, this one of my coworkers who happens to be gay, and he was kind of looking me up and down, and said, "Oh, you've been working out, haven't you?" And I'm looking, I'm like, "Yes, I have." I didn't have the heart to
So,
tell him.
any advice to those who are like in the middle of experiencing this and maybe feel as if they could use a little word of encouragement to anybody out there, maybe kind of wondering what the next step would be, or how you would give them any encouragement, any advice?
Well, I would tell people in any way, whether they're transitioning or not, that the important thing is to be the truest you can be. When you boil down to the realest you that you can be, I think it's very liberating. It's you're not going to be getting rid of the fear factors. Everything's going to be scary. Life is scary. But having that solid foundation of knowing who you are and being able to step forward and be you and practicing, this is me, this is who I am, makes you stronger. And when you're true to yourself, you have a habit of, I don't want to say habit, but you tend to radiate. You radiate your highest energy form when you're being real, when you're being true, and when you're not hiding something, because people know if you're hiding. And what I used to tell my kids all the time is I say, the truth always comes out. Just don't keep me waiting,
Nice. And I noticed you talk about some personal tragedy in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Your ex-wife and your son, what happened?
Yeah, leading up to that, I didn't have a home, and so she let me stay on the floor at her house for a while, which, anytime you're going back with the exes, there's always a tension element. But the cool part about it is I was in a place where I could see my kids all the time. And so I had a lot of those, dude, hey, come here, check this out moments, with Adam, who was my son who passed away. And I feel like I got to know them all very well in the 8 months that I stayed there. And Carla and I, we were about ready to kill each other. And I was fortunate to be able to find a place to live and move out. And so I've been out there for about a month. And, we had gotten back to our relationship, which was, we both cared about each other. We both loved each other, too. We were both the best friends, and neither one of us wanted to be farther away from the other. We just couldn't live together. That's the only thing. So that relationship was really healed. I really got a good relationship with my son, but what had happened was he had joined the Marines, and Carla had gone to pick him up, and they were on their way home, and they had an automotive accident where his car fishtailed and rolled, and the undercarriage was facing oncoming traffic. And anybody who knows 95, you're going to get traffic 24/7, and they ended up getting hit by a semi. So that was.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Yesterday, one of the Dixie Chicks, too.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah, the founding member was in a car crash and died yesterday.
Now with them, and I try to in that I have a strong faith life, and I would encourage everybody to do it. Not to get preachy with anything, but I've really felt the support of God in my life during that, especially during that situation. I felt that feeling of comfort people that I didn't know coming out of the woodwork to help me and my kids and my family through it. It was just an amazing thing. And
Wow.
it still helps me to this day. And what I did was I was able to be Adam and Carla both were organ donors, and as a result of that, I've met a guy who has my son's heart, and I keep in touch with him. He's a great guy. And there was a teenage girl. She was probably 24 hours away from the point of no return, and Adam's liver bought her some more time. Now, I don't know where all these people are right now, but knowing that Adam's organs and Carla's organs could help somebody else to live and bring joy to that family was, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. Which leads us to kind of currently, how did you find your way to the acting world?
Well, the funny thing about that is I've always been an actor. Kind of like, and to tie into the trans thing, it's like one of those things I've always done. It's just, I think with a lot of acting, you can decide to be an actor and you can do all those things to train and perform and all that and be an actor. But there's some people that are just actors, and I'm one of those people. Naturally, I've been blessed with the gift of being able to put smiles on people's faces when I'm in the room with them, whether it be a joke or putting on a voice of somebody else, and I would do voice impersonations. And, when it came to theater, and really, I didn't get to really get into theater until I was in high school. And the high I got from that, the high I get from performing, the only thing that's better than that is watching your own kids be born. Other than that, the high of performing, and it's always been really, once I got married and started having kids, I didn't have time to do that. It was kind of like a pilot light that was constantly lit, and something I never forgot about it. Since my kids are all grown up, it's time to, or as my mom used to say, it's time to shit or get off the pot. So
nice. Now, we spoke backstage, and you told me that you flew out to L.A., you hired a top photographer, a top place to do demo tape, and you're working with a coach, and you've had over 100 auditions and a couple of bookings over the last 2 months. Well, how's that? That sounds like it's life-changing.
Well, I think it definitely is. I think it's life-affirming, reaffirming anything. It's a validation, if you will, of all those things that you thought. It's just like anything, you're excited about it, you want to do it, but until you get to do it, you just never really know. You could read about baseball for and how to swing properly, and you could read and do research and all that about all the positions. But until you step up to the plate, until you face the fastball, until you face the curveball, you just don't know. So, once I've been really fortunate. I got a great coach, great photographer, great makeup lady that helped me to get a really good start and get a good foundation for all that. And I keep the coaching going, and
you having fun?
I'm having a great time. It's just a blast. Even if I don't get anything, all the auditions are really a good time. And
well, everybody knows in this business that most actors, 99% of the time, don't book it, but that's not an excuse not to continue. It's that 1 or 2 out of 100 that can be life-changing. And so tell me some of the characters you play. You seem to be very versatile from that description of yourself. Over the last few months with like 100, 200 auditions, what type of roles are they bringing you in for?
I'm getting a lot of cop roles. What I could do is I put my hair back and I have that kind of look, like I could be kind of like that older-aged cop guy, and I have some props that I'll shoot with a little bit. Like
I would assume you get some crazy characters, maybe
yes,
bouncers and rockers and kind of homeless people too.
Yeah, I really enjoy the crazy parts that I get, where it's like I'm just like bug-eyed. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I noticed on your resume you mentioned that you won some awards for a facial contortionist. Tell me about that.
Has to do with that ability to just kind of scrunch my face around
you really
and
contort your face and your eyes. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you're getting like crazy roles like that, homeless, a maniac, psychotics and stuff.
Yeah.
You are a facial contortionist. He's very
So, yeah, and all that stuff comes from just being me, and I goof off, and I do things, and
So,
it's just,
so what's your goal in 2024? There's going to be a massive amount of casting because of the strike being over. Well, where would you like to be by next year at this time?
I'd like to be, I want to book a major movie. I think that being in a major film would just be awesome to me. My favorite movies of all time were sci-fi. Being booked in a big time sci-fi movie, even if I was that guy that got the shit kicked out of him by the hero, maybe maybe like a member of the ship who just kind of went crazy, got all Bruce Dern and stuff. Just I was the guy they had to put down in order to save everybody. That kind of stuff. I thought it would be cool to have.
You certainly have had an amazing journey. And this has been really enlightening to find out about, most actors, who are older, that they come to the table with a full life, and you certainly don't disappoint there. Is there anything you'd like to say in your parting words to maybe people out there that have experienced the things you did?
I would say just keep it going and just be tenacious, go after it, be hungry, be thirsty, just work it and work it and work it. And it's all a numbers game, really. You just got to do it and do it and do it. But do it because it's fun. Do it because you love it. Don't do it because you want to make money at it. You may make money, maybe you won't. I haven't made any money, very much money at all. I got into a band as a bass player, which makes some money. But with acting, I haven't done it yet. But that's not the point. The point is I have the fun with the auditions. I work hard on booking the room. And
you've only been doing it less than a year. That's a baby in this business. So
yeah, absolutely. I haven't. I don't have the right to be disappointed or frustrated at all. Really.
Just gotta enjoy the journey, and it sounds like you're doing great. And it's been wonderful talking to you.
Well, thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you too. I love to talk about it. I haven't talked to anybody about it, to be honest. I just love to talk.
All right. Give me some more facial contortionists to end it. Let's get.
Ooh. Marty, we got to go back to the future. It's your kids. We've got to do something about your kids. Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Well, thank you, Red Savage.
Hey, you're welcome, and thank you.